I'm wondering because you mentioned a couple of disease areas where goal attainment scaling could be used or has been used or is being used. I'm wondering from your perspective because we're not that other diseases aren't important, but we're very focused on oncology here and what's with RWE. Of course, we're very interested in other disease areas as well and how real world data plays into that. But from oncology perspective, how do you see goal attainment scaling fitting into both maybe the clinical trial setting or even actually when a drug has been commercialized actually?
Yeah, so on one level, it's kind of the same as anything else, especially as if it's chronic and complex, and it's not, cured in an instant with one pill, which most things aren't. So I would see it as analogous to those things. So we recommend using goal attainment scaling as early as possible. So we've yet to convince anybody to use it in phase one. But if you did, you'd get an early indication of any signal if there was any, and you'd also get a really early, robust understanding of what's important to people without having to do all the, qualitative and other work that you would normally do because you get that at the same time. Most people start using it in phase three. A lot of groups that we've worked with have started using it in phase two. And when they have it in phase two, it can really help to make those nuanced decisions about whether the treatment effect is actually there and whether you should be investing and proceeding to phase three. And if you are, what types of outcomes you should invest in to make sure that you capture the information that you're trying to that you need, the evidence that you need to move you forward. We have used goal attainment scaling in numerous phase four trials. They're really interesting in those trials because you get a sense of what's important to both the clinician and the patient. They kind of have to agree, which is quite an interesting discussion in and of itself. And some sponsors we've used it with have really noticed the value of goal attainment scaling to provide them with a nuanced understanding of how the drug is working in their population, but also to be used as a bit of an adherence promotion tool. Because when you get into the depths of talking to patients about what's important to them and talking to them about their treatment regimens and how adhering to those may allow them to achieve the goals that they have, then that can be quite motivating and quite interesting for the patients and the clinicians to talk again in a language that is shared between the two of them. So, in that sense, I think in oncology, you could bring it the whole way through. The holy grail is if you start in phase one and go all the way through to reimbursement. We know of only one study. It was in Eastern Canada, actually, with Dr. Rockwood a very long time ago, using goal attainment scaling data to make decisions around reimbursement for an early Alzheimer's disease drug. And that was hugely impactful. So if you could carry the same evidence all the way through that whole clinical development pipeline, that would be really interesting. With oncology, I don't know as much about it as I do about some other therapeutic areas. This is the problem when you're focused on a method and not on a disease area. But in my understanding, there are a lot of well established, very um, rigorously developed endpoints in oncology treatment. And so I would suggest in the early days of using something like goal attainment scaling, you do think of this as the bridge between your patient reported outcome strategy and your clinical outcome assessment strategy, and see if goal attainment scaling can add any depth or layers to that. And really, in a nutshell, it's that thing that allows you to not just provide personalized treatment, but it's the data that allows you to personalize treatment. So you actually collect the data that's important to people about what they need, and then when you actually get that information, you can use it to tailor the care plan for that particular person or that particular population or whatever.